think that modernization of marketing starts with truly understanding how behaviors of consumers are changing, and then being able to layer on the technological innovations that have happened to unlock that new behavior. And then I would say truly modern organizations also understand that change is constant. So the ability to change manage, the ability to learn new skills, I think these are all critical.
Welcome to The Array by Jacquard, the agentic enterprise platform that creates content that converts. On today's episode, we're delighted to welcome Lynn Teo, a globally experienced CMO, Chief Experience Officer, and digital transformation leader with nearly 3 decades of experience driving growth, customer experience, and marketing innovation across multiple industries and regions. Before we get to speak to Lynn, Jasper, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm looking forward to coming to New York next week.
Yeah, so when you come, that is I think the 5th and the 6th game of the Knicks of the NBA Finals with the Knicks in. So if the Knicks haven't won it in 4, you'll be in New York at like the craziest time.
Are they playing in New York? I'm guessing I've got absolutely no chance of getting tickets.
I don't know. No, even if there were tickets, you're not in that income bracket, unfortunately, to be able to get those. But I don't know if they are. It may be. They may be. The last final games might be here. It might be in New York. We'll have to check. But either way, New York will be crazy. So you're coming at the right time. Or they're going to lose and you're coming at the wrong time. But it'll be good fun.
I always think with these things, either I get lots of enthusiasm or I just get nothing because everyone will be at home consoling themselves.
Well, then you get to go back to the UK when obviously England are in the World Cup, and I know what London's like when England are playing in the World Cup or the Euros, and that's equally as crazy, if not more crazy. So that'll be good.
It's coming home, even though it never comes home.
Nice. Good. All right. Well, let's jump into it. Born and raised in Singapore, Lynn has built an international career spanning North America, Europe, and APAC, leading large-scale marketing transformations in sectors ranging from finance and healthcare to retail, publishing, travel, and technology. Most recently, as Chief Marketing Officer at Northwestern Mutual, Lynn led a significant transformation of the marketing function, making it more agile, data-driven, and accountable for business impact while strengthening brand resonance and customer engagement. In this conversation, we'll explore how marketing leaders can leverage technology to drive growth, the evolving relationship between customer experience and marketing, and what it takes to build modern marketing organizations in an increasingly digital world. Welcome, Lynn.
Happy to be here.
It's great to have you. Where are you dialing in from today?
Well, I'm a New Yorker, and so that conversation you all just had about the Knicks resonated very strongly with me. If you were out on the streets 2 nights ago, you would have heard the cheers for the first game. Yes.
Nice.
Are you a Knicks fan, Lynn?
I am. How could you not be?
Yeah, I think everybody is right now. Nice. Well, before we jump into the main questions, we at every episode we ask some. We basically look at the data, or Jacquard's data, and we pull out some really interesting facts about what people like to engage with and what kind of language they don't engage with. And so I've pulled out a couple of questions that I'm going to ask you and Jasper, and you guys can give me what you think the answer is. And so I looked at this is from millions of marketing campaigns effectively over the last 10 years. And I pulled out what I thought was interesting and relevant to your time at Northwestern Mutual, which was when certain life events are mentioned, it increases engagement rates across lifecycle marketing. And so I'm going to ask you and Jasper, which of these life events do you think gets the highest engagement? Right. So the life events I've got here are when retirement is mentioned, when wedding or marriage is mentioned, we've got baby child, and then home mortgage. Which of those, Jasper, why didn't you answer first? Because Jasper always gets these wrong. So I feel like Jasper answering first is a good indicator of what not to pick. But we don't know. Sometimes he's got them right. So I'll say those again. So which of these has the highest kind of engagement modifier? Which of these improves engagement by the most? So we've got retirement, wedding/marriage, baby/child, or home/mortgage.
I'm going to say baby/child.
Okay.
Do I need to say by how much?
You can if you'd like. That's a harder one to get right.
20% increase over the rest.
20% increase on baby slash. What do you say? You say baby slash child.
Baby/child.
Okay, Lynn.
I'm going to go in on the last option, buying a home mortgage. That would be my bet.
Okay. So the answer for this one is, let me just check, retirement.
We both failed, Jasper.
Retirement.
Yeah, we both got it wrong.
You both got it wrong. Retirement actually improves over the baseline, improves open rate by 91%, which is actually fascinating. It's crazy. They all actually improve open rates significantly. Actually, what was it? It seemed, you know what? Baby and child and home and mortgage is about the same at about a 60% increase in engagement. But they all have at least 50% increases in engagement. Life events in general are good things to talk about in life cycle campaigns. Okay, so the second question I have is words relating to trust, right? And so I've got 3 words, and I want you guys to rank them in the order by how much you think they improve engagement rates by. So I've got 3 words: trust, protect, and secure. When content includes one of those words that has a modifier on open rates, I want you to rank them. Which one do you think is the best performing to the least performing? So that's trust, protect, and secure. So it could be protect your home, or it could be secure your retirement, or it could be, I'm trying to think of what would have the word trust in, but it could be even, you could even have a trust, like a financial trust. It's kind of disambiguated in that way. What do you think, Jasper?
So initially I was going to put trust, secure, protect, but I'm going to change it because of that last comment you made about the fact that it could be any reference to the word trust. And I'm going to say secure, trust, protect in that order.
Okay. Lynn?
Exactly the same for me. I kind of was deciding between trust and secure, but I'd landed on secure as the first, trust, and then protect.
Okay. So trust is the worst and lowers open rates below the baseline. So it's good you both didn't pick that one.
I think that's because of the multitude of uses that you could have for it.
Yeah, I mean, secure also. I feel like secure is also like, it could be like secure your mortgage, or it could say secure something, but also make your house secure with this is not in any one. This could be in any segment of any industry. So you could be like keep your house secure, or it could be secure your tickets to the NBA final. But the answer is protect is the highest, secure is second, trust. And both of those, protect and secure, increases open rates by about 20%, and trust lowers them by about 10% relative.
Well, there you go. My ongoing losing streak continues. I'm certainly not in the same.
I think those were both.
Not playing the same game as the Knicks, that's for sure.
You're definitely, you weren't going to go to the Knicks either way. But at least I think they were very good answers, and I think they were justifiable, the defensible. So anyway, let's.
He's just trying to make us feel better, Jasper. That's all he's doing.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I'm doing. All right, Jasper, why don't you kick us off for our questions for Lynn?
Let's get into it. So Lynn, you've got an incredibly impressive career, working across a range of different continents, industries, disciplines. Was there a particular role, market experience, or project where you saw that sort of really became convinced in this transition to technology and marketing, and realized that it would be the future of the central future to how we market to our consumers going forward?
Yes. I think my time at Sapient, incidentally, for those of you who don't know Sapient, it was one of the preeminent business transformation firms that had its roots in the .com days and survived when things tanked. And for me at least, being at Sapient put me at the forefront of technological change, but also being exposed to CMOs and marketing leaders gave me that bird's eye view that between technology and marketing, something massive was about to happen. And the data that you have on consumers and how technology can be really elevated by the knowledge of data or technology solutions that allow you to connect with people differently, which at the end of the day is what marketing is all about. It's about, letting the consumer know that they are well understood, that you understand their pain points, and that you're there to help, be it a product or a service.
You spent a lot of your career helping organizations kind of modernize their marketing capabilities and modernize how they do marketing. When you look at organizations today, what separates a truly modern marketing organization from something that's just like using new tools, but like maybe not particularly effectively?
Yep, yep. I think usage of tools is very much a baseline, right? We all need to use tools to get things done, but I think the truly modern marketing functions are the ones that will first and foremost look at the insights that they're gleaning from behaviors of consumers, the capabilities of technology to enable those behaviors to happen, right? So we all talk about how AI is changing how consumers search. So I think that modernization of marketing starts with truly understanding how behaviors of consumers are changing, and then being able to layer on the technological innovations that have happened to unlock that new behavior. And then I would say truly modern organizations also understand that change is constant. So the ability to change manage, the ability to learn new skills, I think these are all critical, right? So you're not lying on your legacy solutions or legacy ways of doing things, but to be truly modern, you have to be at the cutting edge of doing things a little differently with, better outcomes. So that's kind of my three-pronged answer to that question.
Where do you sit on that? I agree with all of that. It feels like that's an answer that's very being very data driven, understanding your customers, leveraging modern tools. Where do you sit on the spectrum between the value of brand and maybe the softer side of marketing with kind of technology and being and they're not, it is a spectrum, but they're not opposed to each other in any way. I think brands that do both are obviously it's incredibly important. But where do you sit on that spectrum between using technology and being very data driven versus being a marketer that's far more kind of brand driven and a bit more around the brand side and the data side?
Well, I will maybe challenge that spectrum that you've just outlined. I think it's a fallacy that the two ends of the spectrum are completely different kind of ways of thinking. Every point on that spectrum needs to be performance driven. And so I just think that there's been too much of a binary, that the splitting of the world of marketing between, are you a brand person or are you a performance person? I would debunk that, but I would add a third dimension to it. And I'm adding that third dimension because I have seen how transformation of marketing organizations sometimes don't go the way they're supposed to go or don't achieve full capabilities. The third one is really organizational readiness, right? So you can be a brand marketer, you can be a performance marketer, and talk about how those tools meld or not till the cows come home. But the bottom line is there is organizational readiness. And that is becoming, in my opinion, an even bigger determiner. It could be the readiness of the organization by way of how people understand what marketing does. Where are you starting? How do people think about marketing, right? I remember a former CMO when I was at CA Technology. She said, back in the day, people thought we were the arts and crafts people. And she meant it because there were some people who came to the table thinking that, or some people think that, oh, you show up at events and you make sure everyone's comfortable. And so I really want to play up that third dimension. What does your CFO think about the budget that's been assigned to marketing? Does he or she or the organization feel like that money is well spent? How ready are your peers who may come to the table with very different perceptions of what marketing does? Because so much of marketing is a team sport. You have to connect the dots across many different functions in your organization, and people come to the table with different views. So, that third dimension is really what makes or breaks any marketing transformation initiative.
It's kind of like all marketing is performance marketing at the end of the day. We're trying to drive value to the business. That's kind of why we go after as a pursuit. It's about driving incremental value into the business, right?
That's exactly right.
I was going to say, we definitely see more and more marketing tools, especially, but across the spectrum of the kind of activities that marketers are doing, being far more scrutinized on ROI than I think historically. Far more scrutinized on okay, well, is what I'm paying for delivering a return and and I guess the key word here is quantifiable return, because so many things I think historically in marketing have been unquantifiable, right? And something that a lot of marketers feel they have to do, but don't quite really understand the impact that they're having. And now, because of the tools that we can quantify the impact so much more readily, that marketers are starting to be like, okay, well, if I'm going to spend this money, it needs to return something at a certain amount.
Yes, yes. And I do think that marketing leaders can do a better job of shoring up some of those tried and tested academically proven evidence of the effectiveness, right? So Les Binet, a lot of marketers know the work that he's done that quantifies long-term marketing value and short-term marketing value. And what happens when you do holdout studies, when you do certain geographies where you hold out your brand campaign efforts and what it does comparatively to your number of leads that are being generated, or your brand health, right? So we have tons of academic research, and maybe this is a moment to ask marketing leaders to lean into that, package that up in some form, and maybe have that be a first board meeting or a first executive meeting. So you start everyone with that level set knowledge that marketing is a science. And the way you realize it could be a creative solution. The manifestation of that solve for a business problem could be a creative solution, but make no mistake, it is grounded in hard business metrics, the ability to grow a business, to know that you now get more leads coming in, or you close more sale, or the customer lifetime value is now much larger as a result of that relationship building over time. So there's a lot I think marketing leaders can do differently, as I reflect on my almost 30 years in the industry.
You don't need to have an either. It's not an either or, is it? Marketing is still ultimately a creative pursuit. The goal is to figure out how to creatively communicate with my customers. How to land a message. How to get the value proposition of whatever business it is across, and how to do that in a way that stands out in a very crowded market. But then measuring that is still an input. So they go hand in hand. But creativity, it doesn't you don't need to have an either or effect from doing this. How do you think just talking a little bit more about that, like diving into that kind of technological kind of component to it, and the relationship with creativity, how has technology changed that dynamic? And from a measurement perspective, how do you look at that?
I think technology has given creative teams a quicker feedback loop, right? So you know what's hitting and what's not, and you're not faced with wasted cycles. And I think the other aspect that technology has enabled us is the cost of producing these things has gone down dramatically. I used to have a video team within my creative team itself, right? And if you think about the cycle times in the studio, right? That's all very effort intense. So the combination now of having productivity gains as a result of technology technology means that you're now able to produce maybe multiple versions and iterate in response to quicker aggregations of how maybe a campaign is doing. And now with generative AI, you could actually have kind of creation of these assets, multiple variations to meet your multiple segments with a quicker turn of a timeline. I mean, I think that impact of technology that we're about to embark on with generative AI and LLMs is going to be massive. I mean, I did predictive analytics. This was back in 2020 when I built a predictive analytics team within my marketing function. Even back then, we saw it as a real powerhouse as we were trying to figure out how to meet the demand of our digital product because of COVID. So I happened to be in healthcare during COVID, and we were facing 13 to 15 times the demand for our product because it was helping healthcare professionals. So having stood up predictive analytics at the time meant that the business was able to gain benefit from that pretty quickly. We were able to partner with sales from the outset to start to come up with an algorithm and a model that would grade the likelihood of a lead becoming a sale. That was huge, a huge partnership, a very, I guess, well-regarded partnership with our sales teams because they felt like they were in on the solution from the get-go. They helped us, kind of think about all the parameters that we needed to build a model on. So I think what we're about to see is going to be massive with AI.
How important do you think it is being able to, you talk about predictive analytics and that's all about, knowing who the right people to target are, when the right play time to target them is. How important do you think it is ensuring that ensuring that knowing ahead of time the right message and how it's going to land? Do you think that's a really important part of that kind of workflow?
Absolutely. That's just an extension of like optimization, right? How do I, at the first swing of the bat, know that I'm hitting the right people with the right message with a higher probability than if I went in without some of that aggregation of data ahead of time. So that should have made its way to the brief, to the creative team ahead of time.
How do you think then about, I wanted to tap in on something you said earlier that I think is related to that I really like, which is that how you balance the short-term value versus kind of the long-term value of something. And we think about this a lot at Jacquard, especially around content. Like we can come up with an email subject line, or it can be, I can think on top of my head, a subject line that's probably going to get a ton of opens. Right, it'll be something spammy, maybe something that's like clickbait, something that. But it's kind of it's a short term thing, getting those opens, right, getting the clicks, maybe getting some conversions. But long term, it's negative, right? The brand affinity goes down, the unsubscribes go up, the retention goes down. How do you think about balancing, maybe a content perspective, maybe just a wider perspective in general in marketing? How do you balance short-term return versus that long-term affinity?
Yeah. Well, for marketing campaigns, we think about them as when you're trying to drive demand. So something that's more short term is when you're trying to drive a demand for a particular product or service offering. And I would use a product launch as a good example of that. Or a seasonal demand for a product, right? So with the holidays, you might have special programs to encourage people to buy, or back to school, you might have for retail, right? You have a certain calendar of demand generation. So I think about that as being lower down in the decision-making process. The consumer has already learned about who you are. Maybe they've done their own research about the soundness of you as a company and the value of your products. They may have talked to their friends and family. And somewhere along the line, they're kind of trying to watch for when that moment arises when they could use you or they need a product. So that's known brand, right? You've done your homework. Longer term is when you're trying to maybe build a target audience that doesn't typically think about you when they think about that particular need, right? So you have to make your way into that consideration set and then for them to associate you with a future need. A lot of people forget that 80 to 90% of people are actually not in market. That stat changes depending on the type of product that you sell. But a very good benchmark is like 80% of your people are not in market at the time that you show up. So you have to build that long tail of consideration, awareness, so that boom, when that time comes, they consider you alongside maybe two or three other things, right? So I think about that as part and parcel of marketing. You want people to learn about you and then buy from you and then maybe engage with you and then buy from you again when the moment arises. So different businesses have different lengths of time. Like in financial services, in the business I was in previously, 42 years was the lifespan of a relationship. But if you're buying sneakers, that's a different kind of relationship, right? So I think about the short and long term as you're investing in the long term. So you have a consistent pipeline of consumers. And as a business, if you start to generate products in a different vertical or segment, that becomes increasing your pie. So you now have to figure out, how do I look for those other people?
As someone who's led global and regional teams across multiple markets, there's a huge amount of complexities that goes with that, and ensuring everyone kind of stays within the kind of rubric of what you're looking to communicate to customers. How do you ensure that you use technology effectively to work in that environment, to ensure that you're getting a better customer understanding, rather than just adding complexity to what is already a fairly complex environment?
Yes, I think in global companies, in fact, all companies should have a one-stop shop for your CRM. That's your single view into the consumer. And if you have a globally distributed team, I think being able to log the success of your prior campaigns, because I remember when I was leading global teams, I found a very different pattern of conversion, say in my Asia Pac team, than we used to see back in corporate HQ for some of our campaigns. A good example I would bring up is, I remember when we analyzed the campaigns in Korea and Japan, we found that thought leadership and content it would be held in very high regard. So if we published a white paper, we found that that tended to be the point of entry of a lot of our executive buyers. And then what would follow on is a small group work session with our company CTO or head of tech. That pairing of, an inbound lead coming through because of a thought leadership piece, combined with an in-person roundtable with our own CTO, we did not see that pattern when we were in the US. So again, I think you can only do that. You can only have that nuance if you're able to, track and record the way your campaigns have done, and then be able to slice and dice by countries, by regions, by segments. So yeah, that was fascinating. And, I remember when I shared that with my American counterpart, to like, yeah, that would be difficult to do at scale, right? So then we were leaning more on webinars in the US.
That's really interesting. We just, on the previous episode, we had the adjunct professor of multicultural marketing at USC. And I think that we were talking about how even within the same language, in multiple cultures, be it British and American, that there's a difference in what content you resonate with. But that's a great point. Even the marketing mix and the types of, not just the way something's articulated, but the types of marketing and content that users are receiving. And I suppose in many ways, the kind of how people move through the funnel can be different, depending, whether it's, consuming the white paper, then coming on the site, then, that can be different depending on the region and the cultural elements to it. So I think that's actually fascinating. It's not something in my head, that wouldn't change that much between, but maybe the content would change, but that process wouldn't. But I can see how actually, depending on where you're communicating, you have to think far more about than just the content, but how that brand shows up in front of those consumers. That's I think that's a really good point. Talk to me about being kind of data rich versus insight rich. about, because I feel like marketers have access to like so much data, and I feel like there's almost this analysis paralysis thing that can happen, right? Where you might have access to the data, but it's not really meaningful unless you've like got, you can do something with it. So can you talk to us a little bit about just how marketers can turn all that data, whether they're collecting it or not, but turn that into something that's actually actionable?
Yes, you raised a really good point. There is such a big difference between just having reams of data pumped out in Excel spreadsheets and tables versus the thoughtful process of sitting with that data, extracting it, making the right correlations between the data that you're seeing, and then being able to use it to directionally kind of, decide what to stop doing and what to do more of. Um, so a couple of things. One is, I think if you have an agency partner, to any marketing leader in a big organization that works with an agency partner, I always find it very helpful to bring the agency partners and the internal team together. So you may spit out your dashboards for the quarterly review meeting or the monthly review. And sometimes it's helpful to just give people the data, let them sit with it for a day or two, and then you come back again and you talk in real time about what the data is telling us. We sometimes have like one or two analysts in my data team that actually does a first cut of the aggregated responses and what it means and recommendations. But I still always find it helpful to have that deck alongside the raw data. Because what I have seen in my career is you could be giving that same data to different groups of people, and they will come through with different insights. And as a CMO, if you're going to lead the marketing function and you're a business function, don't forget, however you decide to extract, right, like your insights, that's going to tell us where the money is going to go next and what we're going to be lining people up to do. You can't afford to get that wrong. And that's the reason why I'm always very nervous when marketing teams rely on one or two people to go off and generate a results deck and then just bring it and present it back. I think it is incumbent upon us as leaders to ask the probing questions about whether or not the data could paint a different story. What's the narrative? And to encourage that discussion in real time. Because then teams can challenge each other if they don't believe that that's the resolution, that's not the result that they took away from it. So I value the discussion more than I value the summary.
I've seen literally opposing narratives on the same data set. So I feel like it's a great point. I feel like, and I also think I've certainly seen when people have looking at data sets where they've almost got not a bias, but almost an incentive to have some level of narrative with that data, that then suddenly, you have to see. I like that point about seeing the narrative, but also seeing the data to see what other kind of conclusions can come from it. Jasper, we're running out of time, so why don't you wrap us up with our final question, and we'll go from there.
So we're 5 years down the line. What capabilities do you think marketing teams need to develop? And maybe just to add on to that, how do you think emerging technologies kind of change the dynamic for marketing teams in the next 5 years?
Well, I think 5 years is we're going to see massive change. I think even 2 years, we're going to see a huge difference in the makeup of marketing teams, right? So my anticipation is that the notion of a campaign coordinator or a campaign hub, that concept's going to be reinforced because you now have agents, right, that are able to solve for creation of assets. So I see these campaign hubs as being the central point to track the end-to-end launch, conceptualization, launch, progress of any campaign, and be held accountable for achieving business metrics. Ultimately, some kind of a business metric needs to be kind of the measurement of the output of this campaign hub. So which means teams are are going to look very different. You may not need teams of creative designers. You may not need teams of copywriters. Reporting could be automated to a point. So I think anyone in the producing role in a marketing team should start to build capabilities now in the analysis and insights role, kind of that area. And the orchestration role, I think, becomes more critical. 5 years from now, I think that the connectivity between insights and output would be almost instantaneous, right? So you're going to have these, maybe I even worry about whether or not I should even be using the word campaign. Maybe it won't be a campaign. Maybe it's a different unit of operation for a marketing team, but things will go from insights into product design, because you might have to create a product to be competitive in the industry, or insights immediately into timing of when your campaigns hit. So I think that it's a little bit of a Wild West, but I do think the connectivity between insights, marketing, and product generation or service generation, that's going to be a much shorter time frame. So with that, it means you're able to respond to consumer needs a lot more and provide more value a lot more quickly. I do think that the agency landscape will change as well. So more functions will be brought in-house, and I think agencies will then be tasked to bring a knowledge set that's beyond productivity. It's about, how do I use an agency to help me beat my competition?
Amazing. Well, with that, thank you so much for joining us. Lynn Teo is a globally experienced CMO, Chief Experience Officer, and digital transformation leader.